Okay, so the cardiovascular system has an elaborate control system. There are lots of boxes and arrows, but as I just mentioned, the behavior of those boxes and arrows I think are pretty intuitive and what you might expect. The same is not true for the control of the production of gametes. And so among other things we're going to talk about is how the control of the reproductive system can be quite elaborate. And so that brings us to the last organ system that we're going to talk about, which is the reproductive organs. And the context that we have for thinking about sex and reproduction is how does a male and a female produce gametes that eventually will join together to produce a zygote. And so by way of contrast, let's first talk about a somatic cell. That is all the cells of your body that don't produce gametes. So somatic cells have a nucleus, and that nucleus contains all the genetic material needed to produce your body. And so you have 23 pairs of homologous chromosomes in that nucleus, and if you splay them all out, and you look at them under a light microscope, then they look something like this. They're look like candy. They're multicolored if you stain them. All 23 homologous pairs are shown here. The sex chromosomes, of course, determine well, sex, and so we have here an XY, that's a male. The Y is sort of the vestigial chromosome. Okay, so that's the basics of your genetic material in a somatic cell. And so when your somatic cells want to divide, like they did when you were first fertilized as a zygote, and as you continue to do on a daily basis, then the somatic cell will split so that it produces two cells where there was one. Okay, so let's keep track of how much genetic material we have here. There's 23 chromosomes, and there's a diploid pair of each chromosome, so giving a total of 46. So in the process of division, of course, we want to double that genetic material, and that is achieved before, of course, it splits into two cells. And so that's through the process of replication. So for each of those complementary chromatids, we produce an identical copy. And then through the division of the cell, we have mitosis, so that we end up with two diploid cells that look just like the one that we started with. Okay, so by diploid, I mean you've got, again, 46 chromosomes on each of the daughter cells here, just like the cell that we began with. All right, so somatic cell division, that being the case, can be contrasted to the division that goes on to produce gametes. Because, of course, the goal is to produce a zygote that, like every somatic cell in your body, has these 46 chromosomes. Or chromatids, I mean. All right, so on the female side of things, each germ cell produces one gamete, one egg. And that egg is not diploid, it is in fact haploid, okay? So we don't have a complementary pair of chromatids. Instead, there's just 23 chromosomes in that single egg. Males, as we'll see, produce a lot of sperm, okay? By many orders of magnitude more sperm than there are eggs. And one thing that works in favor of the production of sperm is that for every germ cell, 4 spermatozoa are produced, each one of which has a haploid set of genetic material. So you've got a haploid sperm, you've got a haploid egg. If they can somehow manage through sexual intercourse to unite, then there's the potential to produce a zygote, okay? The zygote being diploid, and therefore having those 2 chromatids, and therefore 46 chromatids in total. All right, so let's think about this production of gametes. Okay, and that's a lot of what we're going to focus on with regards to the reproductive system. And it's different between males and females. So we have basically the same germ cells shown up above and below, and those germ cells initiate this process with, just like any somatic cell, having the 2N set of genetic material. And just like we saw for mitosis, we have a process of replication. But then things begin to look different. So we have 2 stages of meiosis. They're different between males and females. And then we have a second stage of meiosis, which is also different. So this is how females produce 1 egg out of each, this is called an oocyte, each germ cell that ends up producing eggs. So each one of these cells produces just a single egg. We have these vestigial little cells called polar bodies that sort of shrivel up and become nothing. And whereas in the males, we have all 4 chromatids eventually producing gametes that grow tails and start swimming around. So we end up with the 4 spermatids and just the single egg from the single oocytes and spermatocytes that we began with on the left-hand side. Okay, so those are the basic steps that are involved. And then, again, we can produce a zygote if the sperm successfully fertilizes an egg. Now, before these stages, we have germ cells that are generated not by meiosis, but in fact by mitotic divisions. So there's a whole series of divisions of germ cells that precede meiosis 1 and meiosis 2 to produce the egg and the sperm. All right, so those are the basic parts. That's this whole sequence of events for producing eggs and sperm. But they look vaguely similar. There's a difference in 4 spermatids versus the single egg. But the big difference between males and females comes in the timing of these various events. So in the case of males, embryonic development includes a whole series of mitotic divisions. And those mitotic divisions halt when a male is born. And it basically stays in that frozen state until puberty. And then when puberty occurs, then the mitotic divisions resume. And males produce, again, just a ridiculous number of sperm. And so for each of the germ cells that is going to produce sperm, it was created through those mitotic divisions. Females also have a halting of this process between birth and puberty, but the point where that halting occurs is different. It occurs after replication. And then the resumption during puberty occurs right before meiosis 1. Okay, so what this means is that every female carries in her ovaries all of the oocytes that are going to become eggs. There's no more mitotic division after birth. Okay, so in the ovaries are packed all potential future eggs that can be potentially fertilized and produce a zygote, a baby. All right, so our question in this context, now that we've laid out the timing of the production of gametes, is how does the control of all of this differ between males and females? We see that there's a difference in timing. This is all mediated by hormones, and how is that achieved? And so that's the question we'll address on Wednesday.